Often people ask me, can you help me with my marketing? Well, you don't want to ask a guy that's really good with one tool to build your house, right? You don't want the electrician to build your own house. You want somebody that knows all the aspects of it, the strategy, has seen it, has done it. And so for me, I'm really good at podcast interview marketing. That's my passion. That's what I know. But when I've got questions, when other people have marketing questions, there's one man I go to. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, Doug Morneau.
Hey, Tom. Good morning. How are you?
I am thrilled. And you're there in Vancouver. So it's like afternoon for me, still morning for you. I appreciate you getting up on a Friday morning here. But one of the things that has always struck me, both from knowing you, the conversations we've had online and in person, and even on the Real Marketing Real Fast podcast, is your view of the strategy. So quickly you can say, well, this is what other people have done. You could look at this, you could look at that. It's like you have that clarity around that. And while you know all of the tools, you've got a vision for the strategy and the history behind it too. So instead of me trying to introduce you, can you just give a little bit of background on who you are, what you do, and what makes you so amazing to me?
Thanks. I've just got a heart for direct marketing and direct response. And so I tell people that, I help my clients identify their potential customer. I go get a really big stick, whittle down one end so I get a grip with two hands. We'll beat your customer over the head, pick them up by the pant legs and shake them upside down until all their money comes out. Now, obviously, we don't do that, but it's just to say that we take a more aggressive approach and an intentional approach to generating leads and sales opposed to a passive approach. And my take on the services and the value that I bring to people is if my client comes to me with a tactic and says this tactic will fix the problem, then they don't really need me. They just need to find a provider that can deliver that. So I spend most of my days looking at strategies and tactics globally to see what's working, what's not, to connect with people. So, often I have a view or an inside view on beta programs and I see stuff years before it comes out. So so that's basically what I do. I work with people all over the world. Most of my work I focus on is in the US.
Well, and it's amazing. You're like the fortune teller to me too. It's like you see stuff and then I hear you talk about it and 6 months later I hear thought leaders talking about it or different tools. And not only are the fortune teller, you also have an understanding on the past. And I remember when, all of this started earlier this year, right? Going, wow, is this like 2008?
Yeah.
And everybody's saying, well, this is unprecedented times. And I guess if it's the first time you've been through anything, it's unprecedented times. But I remember talking with you and you brought up ideas on, well, this reminds me of some things opportunities we had in 2000 or, the dot-com bubble or 2008 or the different things there. And all of a sudden, as opposed to looking of how can I survive, you started to talk about how can I thrive? And, go back a little bit longer. What were you doing in the last recession? And how do you draw on that?
Well, the last recession, I was working primarily, my clients were in the financial space. So they were publicly traded companies, they're venture capital companies, and they were looking to continue to raise capital and sell their products and services. And so when the stock market and the world economy melted down, they came to me and they said, so, what are we going to do? And I said, well, why don't I go back to our suppliers? Why don't we renegotiate our prices with all our advertisers where we're spending money? And then I think you should increase your budget. So my recommendation to my clients was to double down their budget. So we basically got a 4x return because we reduced our advertising cost, and then we increased our ad spend. And they said, wow, that really worked. What should we do now? I said, well, you should double down again. So, really our clients increased their budgets by 400%. And the same exact thing is happening today. I was talking to some of the exact same media suppliers that I bought advertising with, 2008, 2009. The pricing is down. The response rates are up. They're going through the roof. They're getting way better response rates from the advertisers. So, it's funny. Some things change and some things don't change. When things happen in the world or in our world personally, everybody responds differently. And so I've taken always a contrarian approach to where's the crowd going. I want to go the opposite direction because I find that's where the opportunities are.
In the military, we used to call that the masses are asses. Don't follow the masses, right?
Yeah.
But I love how you see the opportunity, not the problem, and think so big. And I just wanted to share a story here that always amazed me. Is you've done so many things through your life and had so many amazing experiences, and I think this one talks about how you attack life. And I remember you telling me the story. We were at Justin Shank's event there, Growth Now Movement Live in Pennsylvania, having a cigar just to keep the bugs away. And you told me this story about, early on working for a company and they needed a road built. And you're like, I can figure out how to build a road, right? And
Yeah.
I remember Karen, my bride, going, "Had you ever done this before?" And you're like, "No, but somebody else had."
Yeah.
And you could figure it out. And you rented somebody that knew how to use a bulldozer, all the rest of that, and you figured out how to build a road. And I love that attitude that you always come at things with. It's like, well, somebody's done this before. We can figure it out. And that's why it always seems like you're the leader on things, and are the ones to bring it to me early.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, like you said, it's really just an attitude in the way that you look at things. So, this can apply to anybody. I mean, you just have to expand your mind. And lots of times we can't see past our own doubts and our own, where we are with our own consciousness. And, I find that often with salespeople, they can't sell past their own income. So, you get sales guys maybe that are earning $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month, and they're going, "Well, I can't sell a $10,000 website." It's like, well, I sell $100,000 websites. Why can't you sell a $10,000 website? Well, because $10,000 is a lot of money. Well, it is to you, but to the business where it's going to solve a problem and increase revenue, it's not a lot of money. It's an expense. It's an investment. So it really, you need to sell past your own belief system.
Well, even in the scale you talk about and like reaching people, right? All of a sudden we're like, well, I've got a list of 4,000. That's great. I've got a list of 10,000. That's amazing. And then you start coming in and going, well, you could rent a list and to get to hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
And the first time that you told me that, I'm like, how come I never thought about that? Right. Can you explain what you do with people or how you help them really rent lists and get to not thousands of people, but hundreds of thousands of people?
Sure. Actually, we just finished yesterday with my graphic guy. We just finished an infographic. It's a really painful process. I've been trying to distill this down to really easy steps. So we got it down to basically 3 steps. And the example I was using was the CBD industry because they've been heavily hit by bans, advertising bans. And so in the example, it's like, so number one, identify your target audience. So in this case, people who are subscribers to health and wellness newsletters, people who are subscribers to doctors' newsletters around health and wellness, people who shop online and have bought nutraceuticals or vitamins. And the list I was sharing is 600,000 names. So there's 600,000 individuals who have put up their hand and said, I'm interested in alternate health. So what I do is I go to the publisher with your marketing message, and we take your marketing message, and the publisher introduces you as to their subscriber list. So you very quickly go from not having any exposure to that marketplace to having, in this case, over 500,000 people within the hour that the email is sent, seeing your sales and marketing message. So, I do that across all different areas, but that's just an example in the health space.
Well, and it's similar to like why podcast interview marketing works, right? As opposed to just me talking to somebody cold, get on real marketing real fast. You introduce me to your audience.
Yeah.
That's amazing. The leverage that brings. And when you talk to me about that with the emails, first time I'm like, that is amazing, that the power that can have. And also the idea of there's so many of those regulated industries where Facebook, Google, all the rest of that said, no, you can't advertise here. But that doesn't mean that you can't advertise.
That's right. I mean, there's different areas. I mean, and to your point, if you compare Google and Facebook, so when you buy an ad there, they're not introducing you to anybody. You're just leveraging their platform. But, when I'm a guest on your podcast, people have subscribed to your podcast. They know, like, and trust you. So they have this deep relationship with you. So when you introduce me, your audience they're not guaranteed to like me or buy my stuff, but I'm being introduced on the arm of a trusted friend, somebody that they trust. So when I work with a publisher, pick a publisher. If you work with Inc. Magazine, people who have subscribed to Inc. Magazine know, like, and trust Inc. Magazine. So every day when they send out an email, Inc. The subscribers open it. And so when I come in as an advertiser, they're not endorsing me, but I've come in on the arm of a trusted friend. And then they can make the decision whether or not they like my offer or like my message.
Well, the idea too of, like, sometimes people say, well, buying a list, and a lot of times when you buy the list, it's 90% garbage, and we both had horror stories of knowing people that have bought a list and destroyed the authority and their sender score.
Yeah.
So the idea of renting it and renting that exposure is just amazing.
Well, you're
What
really
other?
just buying an ad, right? I mean, think about it. The newspaper shows up in your door and you open it up, there's an ad in there. So the difference is this is an email showing up in your door and there's an ad in there, but the ad is all about, your brand.
Yeah. What else are you seeing? Because one of the things today is, like, every dollar matters, right? At the beginning of the year here, everybody thought they were a genius, both as a investor
Yeah.
and as a marketer, right? And
Yeah.
as somebody pointed out to me years ago, never confuse a bull market with being a genius. And now maybe the same thing is never consider, an up market with being a great marketer.
Yeah.
But now, where every dollar matters, every dollar has to produce. What are you seeing that the smart businesses are doing and turning to?
Well, I think to your point at the beginning, it comes down to strategy. And the problem is that we are just bombarded with information online. And one of the questions I ask my podcast guests is, what's the bad advice in the industry? And I kind of stole that from Tim Ferriss. And there's all these people that are giving advice. And so rule number one, I say, never ask anyone for advice who hasn't done what you're going to do and not willing to pay the price that you're willing to pay. So, pay attention to where you get your advice from. And so, in that space, you got all these new tactics. Hey, do I need to be on TikTok? Do I need to be on Facebook? Do I need to be on LinkedIn? So this last week in my email list, I asked that question to my subscribers. And the real answer is, well, what works with your brand? Where is your audience? So I would say back up. Whatever you're doing now, just back up, take a look at your strategy, and take a look at where the market's going. I mean, we're in these changing times where the world tides have changed dramatically, and there's some things that are just never going to go back. So look at what you call a win for your company, a win for your employees, and a win for your customer, and what people's expectations are, and see if any of those lines are crossing paths. And if in the future they're not crossing paths, you're gonna have to make some changes. So look at your strategy and then look at your analytics, like know your numbers. So for me, I know that in social media, I get the highest time on site, the lowest bounce rate, and the most engagement and the most number of pages on my podcast page from Twitter. So people go, oh, Twitter's dead. Twitter's for old guys. Well, okay, you can say whatever you want, but the numbers are telling me that's the best. I'm not going to name the worst, but it's one of the other social platforms. Just know your numbers. Your numbers might be totally different. For you, it might be Facebook. It might be LinkedIn that works better. It might be Instagram. It might be Pinterest. So, that's where the strategy comes in, because you're not then trying to prove that this tactic is the winner. You're just saying, well, what's working? But most importantly, look at what's not working. So what's not working? So for example, I looked at my LinkedIn strategy and I had been running it for, 6 or 8 months. And I noticed it wasn't working. So I just sent a note to my team. I said, stop all your posts. And they went like, did we do something wrong? We went, no. I said, what we're doing isn't getting us engagement, and we need engagement. So that's the big thing that's changed these days, is that all the platforms, including email and social, are looking to see if your message is relevant. And how they determine whether or not your message is relevant and if they should show it to the rest of the people on the platform or put it in the inbox and email. Is are your people that are following you interested? Are they opening your emails? Are they looking at them? Are they reading them? Are they engaging with your social media posts? Are they commenting?
That's great advice. And it's like that whole thing of stop doing what people loathe and double down on doing what they love. So if
Yeah.
it's not working, it hasn't worked, why continue the test?
Yeah.
Cut the money there and
Yeah.
invest
Yeah.
it in the places that are working
Yeah.
there.
Absolutely.
And it's funny. It's like I've got a email going out this afternoon, and it talks about you're not one funnel away. And so often, and
we're not. Oh man, you ruined my whole day.
I love ClickFunnels. I got a lot of respect for Russell Brunson and everything like that. But so often, the people that are telling us you need to do this also have a product along with it there too. So I think the idea of the going to the strategy and saying, what am I trying to do? Do I think it's going to work? And then actually looking at the numbers.
Yeah, and then testing it. Yeah, and I had that conversation with somebody a couple of days ago. I said, the reason why you're hiring me as a strategist is because I'm not selling a product. So if I'm selling SEO, my answers to all your problems is going to be SEO. If I'm selling email, I said, because a lot of the stuff that I'm going to advise you, I've taken a deep look at your business, is going to be free. Meaning we're not going to spend money on it. We're not going to buy advertising. There's strategic partnerships. There's content. There's some technology you need to clean up. So strategies about working towards the best outcome, not necessarily rushing off the credit card and buying advertising.
Well, you mean throwing money at it won't make it work?
Well, no. I mean, like some of the best opportunities that are out there don't require advertising dollars. But if you're selling advertising, if that's your business, that's all you've got to sell. So that's what you're going to pitch to all your clients or potential clients. What I'm saying is, no, look at the, like you said, look at the big picture. What are the big opportunities out there? And it might be just an introduction to someone like you to say, hey, go talk to Tom, right? Who does Tom know? Or go talk to this person, and they form a partnership or a joint venture, or there's some sort of relationship. And there's no advertising dollars exchanged, but there's this new synergy and this new opportunity.
Well, and that whole thing of, I love the idea of when you're the strategist, you've got lots of things to pull from, and you're not just trying to sell one thing. I always struggle when people say, you need to do this. This will work. And I always look at it as a different market at a different time, right? So if I tell you, Doug, today when you go to the store, go to aisle number 2 because that one goes the fastest.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to help you, but I'm talking about a different store at a different time. So if you can say, why did you think aisle number 2 went fast? Well, because it was, aisle number 1 had somebody with young kids. Aisle number 3 had people my age and older that have a hard time going through the automated checkout. And aisle number 2 had the young kids that could do it. All right, I can learn from that. Sure. I can reproduce that.
Yeah. Yeah. And with retail businesses, I'd often get them to print out a calendar, then print out their sales over the course of several years and look at things like even weather. Like, well, why were we just crushed in June that year? Our sales were crazy. Well, you're a bike rental company and the weather was phenomenal. Best June ever. So it wasn't a magic marketing moment. There were outside contributing factors. And I think that's one thing that we need to look at even now when we look at our data. So we're going through this pandemic and this crisis at this time. We're going to have a big blip in our data because people are spending more time online than they typically spend online. Everybody in the world now knows what Zoom is. People are spending more time on social media. The open rates for email are going up. The click-through rates on email are going up. So, is this going to last forever? No, it's going to be a blip, but it's definitely going to make a mess of our data. We're going to have to, take a deep look at that and figure out what's going to work in the future.
So what do you do then to figure out the noise through the signal? Right? Because I hadn't thought about that I thought my emails were getting better, that they got better open rates and click-through rates.
Your emails are getting better. I'm on your list.
Well,
So they
Yeah,
are getting
and
better.
you haven't called me out for just copying your titles. Well, if it worked for Doug,
Yeah.
he's a smart guy. I'll do the same.
Yeah.
But no, so how do you do that? Is it just looking at that moment in time and comparing, like you said, is LinkedIn working better than Twitter for me right now? Or are you looking through a longer period of time? Or is it a little bit of art, a little bit of science, a little bit of experience?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, but it's also comes back down to testing and documenting. So, and right now there's a lot of technologies that have come into place. So artificial intelligence is coming on in a lot of spaces. And so, use the tools. And your friend and someone I had on my podcast I really enjoyed was Christopher Lockhead, and he talks about big data. So, there's data that's available that can help us make decisions that we can look at, how people have reacted and responded. So, for example, I use a tool to test my email subject lines. And so on the bottom of my emails, you'll see this subject line was pre-tested with 65,000 similar email sends to 25 million people. So, I'm using tools to try to be smarter and to deliver better value and a better experience to my users. So, use the tools. The tools are out there. You just, again, that's where the strategy comes in, to look at what you're doing, look at what's worked in the past, look at current trends in the marketplace. Try to anticipate the needs of your customer, and then look at the big data that you've got that you can share.
Well, you talked about the different tools and your emails. I love them, but the things that I love the most is scrolling down and seeing what tool has Doug tested right now. Right? It's not somebody that developed the tool. I remember somebody told me there was two types of liars. Mark Twain said at one time there's two types of liars. Liars and dang liars. And this guy said, and there's a third type. I helped invent this. So with that, you've got to take it with a grain of salt when it comes, but you always play around with it and say, this is the good, the bad, the ugly. There's a lot of those where you pointed something out and I use it for a week on the free trial, get all the stuff that I need as a business owner. So I just wanted to thank you. You always bring those at the podcast, Real Marketing, Real Fast, and then also in the newsletter.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, that's what I get to do. So for me, I'm so excited. I mean, that's the geeky side. So, there's the creative side of the marketing, but there's the analytical side. So I spend a lot of time looking at and testing, and then, sharing with other people, because I'm not always right. I mean, I'd be ridiculous if I said I was right. So the one I shared was the Google site speed. And I thought, well, this is going to ruin a lot of people's days, because I put one of my websites in and it sucked on mobile. And I went, man, that's really bad. But here's how I figured that out. I was looking at my analytics, remember, know your numbers, and I could see this really high bounce rate. And I thought, well, where's this high bounce rate coming from? Oh, it's coming from mobile. Well, why is the high bounce rate coming from mobile? Why am I getting 100% bounce rate? Well, one of the things to check is the page loading. So when I use Google Site Tool, I scored a 6 out of 100. Well, that explains why people aren't sticking around. It takes too long for the site to load. No one's going to wait 15 seconds. So I shared that with you and all the subscribers. I thought people are going to like me and hate me for this, because I, in advance, looked at some of my friends' sites, and I thought, yeah, they're not going to be happy, but at least
Well, I remember that day. It was a Tuesday because we were in a mastermind group together. And so I clicked on it. I thought, that's interesting. I'll run the score on it. I felt really, really bad, and then thought, maybe there's hope. Maybe it's like golf where low score wins. And then I asked that in the afternoon. You're like, nope, low score loses every time. Yeah. So, but with that data, it gave me the chance to go back to my team and say, listen, we need to fix this. And that's that valuable strategy that you bring. And I think that, getting back to it, it's like today, when every marketing dollar needs to produce, I don't want to just do tests and buy products. And, I don't have the time nor the money to do that. So that's why I always turn to you and say, what's your big picture thinking on this? What could be done? How do people typically work with you?
They'll typically engage me to look at what they're doing and then develop a strategy. So sometimes it's just a kind of a fee for service. Hey, I need a strategy, so we'll write a strategy plan, and then there's the option to engage me to help them execute that strategy, which everyone takes. So honestly, I haven't written a plan for anyone who they said, I don't want you to execute this. So then I work with them and their team. And the reason I take that approach is because I have skin in the game to deliver a result, but they don't need to buy services for me to get paid. I get paid for the strategy and my thinking and the management, and I'll use their team. So what teams and resources do you have? If you don't have a web guy, you can get a web guy. But if you have a web guy and a PR person, so so it's really about looking at where you're at, filling in the gaps. If there's gaps, I'll fill them in. If not, I just provide the strategy, work with the team, help give them direction, work with their Google guys and their Facebook guys and there's SEO guys.
Now, is there any like size companies that you work best with? Because it's like a lot of times, like I would say, I would love to hire a CMO like Doug, but I can't afford to hire a CMO like Doug. But if we can get that strategy, the mind, and then have him help me implement it, that works out a whole lot better. Do you find certain clients you work with, it could be industries or sizes?
Yeah, I would say that most of the clients are probably spending $10,000 or more a month on advertising,
Mhm.
and they don't have a CMO. So I can come in a fractional space where they can pay a fraction of what they pay for a CMO and have me overlook what their team's doing, give them feedback and direction. And for startups, unless they're a VC startup where they've actually got capital to spend, I'm not a good fit because you're starting from ground zero and you're going to have to invest in your business. And my approach to marketplace to scale has been less about organic and more about paid, only because I've not been able to find a scalable way to scale quickly with organic. So my clients are looking for a quick win. So we can argue all day long that Facebook should be showing our feed, our posts to the whole audience. It's their platform; they're not charging us. So it's kind of a pay to play world, and I like that. And the reason I really like that is because most of the world, like you said, the masses are asses. Most of the world are sitting in their corner, sucking their thumb, and complaining that they're not getting distribution on the social media platforms for free. In the meantime, we're off in the corner making hay with our clients because we're paying.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think it was our we both know Barbara Turley from
Yeah.
the virtual hub there. And
Yeah.
she said is that when there's blood on the streets, most people hunker down and stay off the streets. Whereas entrepreneurs are like, we can help. There's opportunity here, and as opposed to complaining that it's not fair what Facebook is doing. It's
Yeah.
not fair whatever's going on in the world. Well, nobody said it was fair, but you got to find the opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. That's so funny. It's like, it's not fair. It's like, where did it say in the handbook that life was going to be fair? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be insensitive. We've all had challenges in our life and family, and we're in a really tough situation. But that's the way it is. That's the cards have been dealt with. So now we have to figure it out and move forward.
Yeah, and I love how just your mindset, right? Even when we talk, I always come away feeling like I just had a pot of coffee, right? With new energy, new optimism on it. It's almost like what is it? The Stockdale paradox, right? Acknowledge the reality, but never lose hope. And
Yeah.
you're always looking at that on what opportunities are out there.
Well, I tell people I'm just too stupid to quit. So they say, why do you do that? So I'm just too stupid to quit. So I just keep going.
Yeah. You don't know if you're stubborn or stupid, but you're the one that wins at the end, right? Because everybody else quit.
Yeah. I mean, I that really breaks my heart. It makes me sad to see people hide and hope that things will get better. I mean, we have days where we all have down days, but you need to get up. And so, this time I really hate to see businesses and people suffering, but there's going to be industries that you have to just make a call on, or businesses that you're just going to need to admit that you're going to shut it down today, or you're going to bleed out 100% of your resources trying to save it. And then you're going to shut it down in 6 months or a year. So, pick your poison.
Well, and also I love it that you get the outside advice, right? Because maybe it's because you look at it from the outside that you bring such clarity whenever we talk. Like you could do this, this, and this, and it's always bigger thinking than I did. So there's like more clarity there. And a lot of times you'll mention something, I'm like, oh yeah, I should have seen that.
Yeah, and we all do that, right? We all sit and look and go like, man, why didn't I see that? Or why didn't I think of that? And that's why you're in community. That's why you're in masterminds. That's why you belong to networking groups, because the power of other people's thinking, looking at your situation. I had a friend of mine once say that, the thinking that got you into the problem isn't going to get you out of the problem. And so that's the issue, right? We get this stinking thinking, and we get into see this problem, and we're using that same mindset to try to get out what you can't. And that's where often somebody that's outside, with a different perspective, they don't need to be in our business, can say, well, have you thought of that? It's like, duh, no, I never thought of that.
Well, what's ordinary to you is amazing to others, and definitely amazing to me. Doug, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, if they're like, man, I love this guy, I love his heart, he's what my business needs, I know they can go to listen to the podcast, but how else can they get in touch with you?
You could go to my website, dougmorneau.com. You could phone me. I'll give you my mobile numbers, 888-430-4892. Set up an appointment. We'll have a conversation. I'm not expecting that relationships and business starts immediately. The reality is, I'm just happy to have a conversation with people that are in business, that have a goal of trying to go someplace. And if I can offer them some advice and direction to get there, fine. If I can work with them, that's fine too. So just reach out. I'm all over social media. You can find me.
And I was going to say, I would say Doug is one of the nicest guys I know, but then they'll say, well, he's just Canadian. He's one of the nicest Canadians I know, but also he'll tell you like it is. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that you've got a worldview that's different than I see from people in the States. And I think that gives you a different viewpoint, and you've been a great blessing in my life. And that's why when people ask me for marketing questions, I'll say, I've got an opinion, and you know what the joke is about an opinion, but why don't you reach out to Doug, because he's got the answers.
I appreciate that. That's a perfect example of building a strong network, and that's how we connected. So we connected in an event, we've stayed together, connected, part of a networking group, and and you've got so much wisdom. So that's what we need to do. If you want to build your business, you got to get around like-minded people who are going someplace that will, arm in arm, we'll march forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Doug.
Hey, thanks. Great seeing you again. I appreciate the invitation to join you today.